Oh my God, man. These movies are just freaking terrible this year. But, it's still early in the year, so. And they always are terrible this time around this time of year. So, yeah.
Wow.
What's up, everybody? Michael Stephenson here. So we are back for yet another episode. Of course, this is my channel. This is my entertainment series on my channel, part of that. You probably already know the spiel. If you don't, I am trying to do these entertainment series videos in order. So they have labels, episodes. Please go back and watch some of the earlier episodes. I'm trying to build or bank up a sort of dialogue specifically for the channel so that I can have like a shorthand with you guys so that in later videos I can make some of those later videos a lot shorter than some of these earlier videos. So tonight I want to talk to you guys about release dates. Oh my God, I have been waiting to do this video because, for starters, there have been as much as we want to give a lot of credit to streaming and especially to the interruptions that we had to go through with the pandemic and how that supposedly has changed the film industry. Hint, hint, it's not changed it really all that much. It's been other things that has changed it, streaming more than the pandemic. But as much as we have given credit to those things for changing stuff, I feel like release dates have still stayed virtually within the same sort of level of importance. Okay, so I want to go through some release dates, and this of course is also I'm trying to rush a little bit through some of these videos because I want to get to my Dune Part 2 video and say why I think that is probably going to be a bad movie. So first off, let's just establish some things. We all know, or at least we should all know, if you are over a certain age, let's say, again, I like to put the age somewhere around 14, 15 years old. Not only is it a good age to be more aware, more cognizant of the world around you, but it's also where the age demographic tends to start for Hollywood, right? So it goes from like 15 to somewhere around 50, 55-ish, somewhere in there. And they lengthen that in most recent years because it used to be at like 45. But if you're older than 15, then you should know that Hollywood has a release date calendar, or they have certain ways that they think about releasing their movies, right? Essentially, they have certain months that they find to be more conducive for releasing a movie, especially if they think that it's a good movie or a great movie, a movie that's going to do well, a movie that's going to get a lot of money, etc., a huge box office, etc., right? That's why we all know that summertime is usually like movie time if you are a cinephile and you love movies, right? So let's talk about specifically, I want to call out the 4 worst months generally to release a film and for the release dates of a film and why we generally perceive these to be the 4 worst months. Okay, so in order, well, not really in order, the 4 worst months are generally January, March, August, and September. Now, let's go through some of the reasons why these months are tend to be the months that are the worst months to release a film in, and why some other months are left off that list. Okay, let's back up a little bit and just give a tiny bit of history. I don't want to make this video that long, mainly because I don't want to have to edit a long video. Some of these videos I've had to actually reshoot because the editing process, it was just going to take me all day to do just one video, and it's like I'm trying to get a few of these videos out a bit faster, just so I can build more of a channel. Okay, so back in the day, it was important to release films in a particular manner, right? As was said, the first quarter of the film, of the year, the first quarter of the year, business quarter, January, February, March, kind of was a bit of a write-off, but it is in some ways a bit of a write-off for most businesses. So Hollywood was really not very invested in releasing almost anything good during that time of year. Not only were they not truly invested in releasing something good, but once TV came along and became like a really big thing somewhere around the mid 50s, and really like almost everybody had a TV starting in the 60s, that really dropped off even more, mainly because now they could parse the seasons of TV into two halves, right? So you had the first half that would start somewhere in September and it would go all the way to December, and then you had a second half that would start sometime in January and generally go all the way to May. And that was kind of a great sort of break for the studios, since the studios own both the film and the television sides, television arms of these production companies and what have you. They could just focus more on their television side during the winter months. And that worked phenomenally for them. Well, as of late, people have been trying to push to get studios to release actually good films in winter, and it has not gone well so far. So let's go start with January and go through why that was never a good month to release a film in. So again, you got to look at January. Yes, there have occasionally been one or two hit films that released in January, but the reason why it was generally never a good month to release an actually good film in, and when I say release, I mean wide release. The reason why generally was because of the weather. Listen, I know that people in Europe, they're sort of spread out across a whole bunch of different countries. The weather can be different depending on where you are. Obviously, the weather in the United Kingdom, the British Isles, the United Kingdom, not the British Isles, but just the United Kingdom, Ireland, Britain, Scotland, that is or can be very different than the weather in the Mediterranean right now. Like, it's probably much colder there, probably a lot more rainy, etc., etc. So it's spread out throughout Europe. And of course, in southern hemisphere places, it's probably a little bit warmer, right? But here in America, even though in California, in the Southwest, and places over there, it can be a lot warmer over there than it is in the eastern part of the country. Generally, and of course, Hollywood is based in the Southwest, right? Generally, Hollywood always catered to wherever they had the most people that were going to go see their movies. So yes, there are plenty of people who are spread out across the U.S., across the country, but still, even to this day, most people live on the eastern border, on the eastern border, or in a little bit of the northern Midwest. So I'm in Ohio right now. Once you get past Ohio to Illinois, you start seeing a lot more sparse populations out there, and you really don't see big population booms until you get out far west to California, to Washington, or to Oregon. But for the most part, most people live in the Eastern Standard Time Zone. I live in the Eastern Standard Time Zone. And because of that, most of us also experience real cold. We actually experience real winter. So one of the reasons as to why most movies have never, or at least most good movies have never actually released in January, is specifically because of the weather. It's just too cold. Yeah, you could release a really good movie, but it's gotta be stellar. It's gotta be a phenomenal, talking like classic type of movie that you should release in winter, because otherwise, why on earth would I want to even leave my nice, warm, cozy house? People don't even want to leave their houses to go to work anymore, right? They don't even want to leave their houses to go get groceries, especially. And you just consider that generally January and February were the biggest, toughest months for like snow-laden people. You're talking about New York City, our most populated city in the U.S. That city would potentially have some snow going on and stuff. People just didn't want to go outside. So that made January one of the worst months to release a big-time film. Another reason, of course, is also because of the fact of what is called the January hangover. And the January hangover in recent years has been met with dry January. That specifically refers to alcohol, but essentially the January hangover referred to not just alcohol or something like that, but almost everything. We just went through a holiday season. We spent a crap ton of money on presents, gifts, tons of money on going to parties, tons of money probably on seeing good movies that released in December, tons of money doing a lot of different things. Come January, not only do you not want to go outside because it's super cold in the eastern seaboard, but generally also you're broke. Like, you don't have nearly as much money. You've made some New Year's resolutions, probably to make more money, probably to lose weight, etc., etc. You're already dropping those. It's just not a good time to release almost anything, which is another reason why January tended to be pretty much the worst month out of the entire year to release any kind of movie. So the second month that was really bad to release a movie was March. But before we get to March, of course, I have to talk about February, because a lot of you are probably saying like, well, wait a minute, hold on. February follows right after January, and generally February, especially here in the U.S. in the Eastern Standard Time Zone, it has like a lot of snow. Like February is usually the month where we have the most blizzards, where we have the most traffic accidents due to snow, due to rain, due to inclement weather. Why is February not even part of the top 4, let alone the second worst month or even the first worst month? Honestly, 3 things. And again, this yes, it affects Europeans. Well, it affects the rest of the world, because U.S. is we are usually the country to get our movies first. Not always the case, but we usually release our stuff in the U.S. first. So you guys might not know of this, or you might know of it, but you might not care, which is fine. But we have 3 reasons as to why February is actually not that worse of a month. The first one is that we actually have a legitimate holiday. Now, yes, in January in America, we have a holiday, Martin Luther King Jr. Day, but it's not really, it's not the kind of holiday that you usually want to release like a big time movie on, unless it's a historical movie, or unless it's a movie about Black people, and we'll get to that in a second. But we have internationally the holiday of Valentine's Day. Now, is it a real quote unquote holiday? Yes and no. Obviously, no, you don't get off of work for Valentine's Day, but the movie production companies and studios, they see it and they look at it and they go just like everybody else, like, hey, it's a holiday about love. People are celebrating their relationships, going out on dates. Weddings sometimes happen on Valentine's Day, proposals, etc., etc. And there's nothing more connected, I guess, than the whole dinner date in a movie, right? So even if it's your first date, you can just go out with somebody and go to dinner, catch a movie afterwards, or do the movie first, catch dinner. It just sort of goes hand in hand. So most studios know that, look, regardless of whether we actually have something that is, well, no, I shouldn't say that. Most movie studios know that if they can release a film that's either female-centric, girl or woman-centric, or if they can release a movie that has a little bit of romance in it, or rather a movie that is mainly a romance, that is mainly romantic, then they generally know that they can get some money from that. They can drum up a good box office opening from that. So that's one of the things that makes it not that bad of a month as opposed to January. And also, people do save up money to do special things for Valentine's Day. They'll save up all their money from the very start of the year all the way through January up until Valentine's Day, when we get exactly halfway through the month, except for this year where it's a leap year, but we get roughly halfway through the month and gonna spend some money on my sweetie, etc., etc. So like I said, you get some romantic dramas, you get some romantic comedies. Even if these things didn't even if these movies didn't actually release in Valentine's Day, you could easily see something like The Curious Case of Benjamin Button or The Notebook. You could see a movie like that releasing within February and doing incredibly well, because it's a romance and people are interested in love this month. So that's one thing that makes it not that bad of a month to release a film in. Number 2, again, here in America, we have the actual holiday, and this is a holiday. There are some groups of workers that do, in fact, get this day off, and that is President's Day. So here in America, we celebrate our presidents. There are, I believe, 2 presidents' birthdays this month, Abraham Lincoln, and I think George Washington. So we celebrate their birthday, and there are some people that get off for that day. Not everybody, but there are quite a few people. Their schools usually get this day off, so the kids are home for at least one day. It's usually celebrated on a Monday, so you can have a longer box office to where it's like, okay, the kids are going to be off for one day. I don't really want to pay for a babysitter. Maybe I'll take off too, and we'll go see a movie or something like that. So it'll be some sort of kid-friendly action adventure type of film, and that can do fairly well in February. So yeah, we have an actual legitimate holiday, and it also comes right around Valentine's Day as well when we celebrate that. So the two sort of go hand in hand. And of course, 3, last but certainly not least, here in America, we celebrate Black History Month in February. So almost all of the studios know that, and unfortunately, it's sort of a catch-22 here, but they know that, look, if we have a movie that's starring black people, that has at least one prominent black person in it, and that person is crucial to the plot, or that person is beloved by the black community, then we can release a black film in February, and almost like 50% of the movie going black population will probably go out and see that movie regardless of the weather. Yes, most black people kind of hate the cold, but we tend to still brave it to go out and see some sort of black movie, and or it gets brownie points usually if it's like a black love story, something like I think The Photograph with Issa Rae and some Lakeith Stanfield, I think is his name. That was a pretty okay movie. The problem is that those movies don't actually have to be all that good. They just have to be starring black people, unfortunately, because black people, we are so starved for representation on screen. But the studios know, listen, we can put a black film out every single Black History Month, every single February. We can put at least one black movie out, and black people will come out, and usually they will support it. This year we had the film on Bob Marley that just came out. Is it a good movie? Apparently not. I want to see it. I'm not going to the theaters to see it. It's just too cold for me. But I'm sure some people will go out and see that movie. I'm sure they will. So those are the three things that make February actually a better month to launch a movie than January, March, August, or even September. So then we have to move on to March. Why is March a bad month? Well, again, March does not actually have number one, March does not actually have a legitimate holiday. Now, yes, I know a lot of you will say, well, it has St. Patrick's Day every single year. True, but St. Patrick's Day is not really the kind of holiday. It's not really the kind of holiday where you go, oh man, it's St. Patrick's Day. You know what we should go? We should go out and we should see a movie. That's not really what St. Patrick's Day is. It's not what it's about. St. Patrick's Day is more of a drinking holiday. People want to go out. They want to party. They want to spend time with their friends, playing games, doing silly stuff, right? Going to parades and things of that nature. St. Patrick's Day is not really a good time to release a movie because people don't celebrate it that way. So then I know some of you will probably say, well, but it has like Passover as well as Jewish holiday of Passover, as well as sometimes Easter as well. But the problem is that those are only sometime holidays. They don't occur in March every single year. Even when they do, they occur at the very end of March. It's spring then. It's better to just push your movie like a week or two into April. If they both occur in March, they very rarely have ever occurred earlier than I guess March 21st. So it's kind of just, it's a no. It's a no. Another reason why generally March was not a good month, because again, just like February and January, it was still cold. This is actually not even that rare of an occurrence, but for some reason people still act like it's a rare occurrence. But we routinely have a March blizzard. I know that we have March blizzards right around where I live in Ohio. We do live close to the snow belt, but March blizzards are not even that uncommon. We almost have one pretty much every year, at least somewhere along the eastern seaboard, not too far south, of course. I think it sort of tops out at North Carolina, somewhere in there. But yeah, chances are high that one of the northern states in the U.S., one of the eastern states is going to see some snow in March. And it's just like March is, even though we have spring, on the 21st, 20th, somewhere in there, even though we have spring, doesn't matter. Like March is still really, really cold. It's just as cold as February. So most of the time people are just like, yeah, I still don't want to go out. I still want to cuddle up at home with my dog or my cat or my significant other, whatever. People just still don't want to go out. Number three, this varies a lot because no school district even is the same. But generally, if you're younger, you're probably saving up like a little bit of money for spring break, something like that. And most spring breaks don't tend to happen until, weirdly enough, after spring has officially sprung. So you're talking about like a week after the 20th to 21st, then maybe they'll have spring break. But usually there's a lot of schools that don't even have a spring break until around April. Releasing a film in March feels, it almost feels like you've jumped the gun in some instances. So yeah, if you're young, the kids are still saving up. College kids, high school kids, people just fresh out of college, most of them are still saving up for some sort of trip or what have you, for spring break. So they're not really thinking about going to the movies. And then there's like, you know, there's some other reasons why you generally just don't see a whole lot of movies, or at least a whole lot of good or great movies being released in March. A lot of the times, because the business cycle is the way that it is, so January, February, and March tend to be the sort of write-off months where they'll release a movie, they'll release it expecting a loss. They're making sure they're hedging their bets. They're making sure that they might have something to write off for taxes by the end of the year. So it's just like, yeah, you know, we might have made money on this film some months down the line, but we lost a whole bunch of money on this film really early in the year. And so throughout the whole rest of the year, we had to make up that loss from the beginning of the year. So it's like, oh, well, yeah, okay. I guess that makes sense. We'll let you write this thing off for taxes. It's complicated. Our tax system is complicated, but trust me, that's one of the things that they definitely think when releasing movies in the earlier months. So that doesn't mean that you don't see any movies being released or any good movies. Usually what you will see, these are the two things that are sort of immune to the March sort of madness, if you will, to use a basketball term. The number one is animated films. If it is an animated film, it doesn't really matter where in the year. Even January sort of is an okay month to release an animated film. If it's a really good animated film, you still want to push it back a little bit further. But animated films seem to sort of be immune to all of the other market concerns when it comes to release dates for films. So you can release an animated film. I think Disney released Zootopia some years ago. That was like, 7-8 years ago now, in 2016. They released Zootopia, and it did very well in March. So animated films, pretty much, they can be released throughout the year at any time, and it won't really affect their box office. And then the second thing that seems to be, it's not immune to it, but they do this sort of as a testing for the launch of franchises that production companies and studios are not excessively sure about. So say something like a Hunger Games. I think the first Hunger Games was launched in March, but it might have been in April. If you launch something like that to where it's like, yeah, you know that there's technically an audience for this particular story because you know that it's based off of a book. There are a lot of people who love and enjoy this book, but it's seeing the screen for the first time, so you're not really sure if people are gonna come out to see this movie. You don't know really how well it'll hit. That's when you're not sure about something within the film. Like maybe you're not sure about the performances that were given, or if the star that you have in the film, if he or she can truly carry the film, if they really did good. Again, March is a good month to launch something that you're really unsure about. And so you will get something like a lot of the teen dramas and things of that nature have, I believe, launched in March because it's like, yeah, we know that there's an audience for this. We know that it is. But we as a studio, we as a production company, we're not sure that we nailed the interpretation of this story. So we're going to release it in March and see just how many people bite on it. But let me be very clear about this. If it is not the launch, the first time, the first movie, if it's not the launch of a franchise or whatever, that usually means that it's not good. Like if it's the sequel, like you can understand, for instance, you can understand something like The Hunger Games being launched in March, okay, because they're unsure about it. But if The Hunger Games still did the same kind of numbers that it actually did, the first Hunger Games did the same kind of numbers that it actually did, and then its sequel launches in March too, that then shows like, no, they don't really trust their property, or they don't really trust the fans of the property. Because usually if they do have a good launch for that franchise and they make a lot of money, then generally the sequel to the franchise, the next movie in line, gets one of those premiere release dates, right? You see that the last Hunger Games, because the Hunger Games series had proven itself time and time again to be able to make a lot of money, a lot of box office. The last Hunger Games film that came out, the Songbirds and whatever, it came out in November. That is generally the progression. if the sequel to a franchise comes out in March, that generally means that, yeah, this is not a good movie. We don't actually believe in this movie. We are unsure about this movie still. So, that's going to play a role when we talk about Dune Part 2. So then you move on to some of the other months. April is one of those months to where it's like, yeah, you can launch something in April. It's getting a lot warmer. Obviously, April has a higher likelihood of having Passover and Easter in April more often than in March. And like I said, you got the spring break, so everything is pretty much going good for April. You can launch something in April. You can have the sequel to something in April. It has fewer barriers. So then, of course, we come to the prime months, the months of May, June, and July. May, June, and July are pretty much sort of all one in the same month. Any sort of blockbuster that you want to launch, that's pretty much the time to do it. And I'm talking about blockbusters to where it's like, it's just popcorn fun, good old-fashioned action, adventure, some swashbuckling, some little hints peppered in of romance, some drama in there, etc., etc. Yes, you can launch maybe one or two serious movies in there, something like a Dunkirk or Oppenheimer. But for the most part, you kind of want to keep summer nice, light, fluffy, sort of airy. You want something that is 4-quadrant movies, or movies that essentially the entire family can go to, watch, and enjoy all together. But then we skip over to August and September. And they also are bad months to launch things in. Now, why? Well, first, let's actually skip to October, November, December. We know that October, November, and December are actually good months to launch stuff in, mainly because those are months that are the run-up to Oscars season. So anything that you have that is an Oscar contender that you potentially want to see an award for, something like that, you launch it in October, November, or December. But then also they are around the holidays. So people are in the mood, whether they want to or not, people are in the mood already to spend money. So they're naturally going to be doing that. They're going to be spending money. Hey, you want to go see this movie? Yeah, all right, I'll go see this movie. Heck, I just spent $100 on getting some sort of gift for my niece or whatever. I can spend another $20 on a movie, whatever. People are just more inclined to open their wallets and do something that will make them feel good, make them feel happy, or to be intrigued or challenged by a story, if it's an Oscar fair type of film. And of course, October has that added in bonus of being the spooky month, so to speak. So people are interested in seeing horror films, etc., etc. So why then is August and September both bad months? Well, first off, September, it sort of gets a bit of a mulligan here, mainly just because, for whatever reason, in the last decade or so, studios have decided, yeah, we're not going to launch a whole bunch of horror films back to back in October, which, why they're doing that, I really don't know. Like, it's very bizarre to me, to be honest with you. But hey, do you, studios? So instead, they've decided to start launching horror films in September and then hope that they just have a long stay. So they'll have a long stay through to October, through to the horror and the spooky season, rather than launching in October. That does not mean that any other movie that you launch will have the same kind of, or have the same sort of beneficial attributes assigned to it. Unless it's a horror movie, pretty much anything else that you launch in September is probably not a good movie. It's just straight up probably isn't a good movie. And same thing goes for August. Now, why? Again, because usually August is, weirdly enough, August, as opposed to the other summer months, is the vacation month. So what tends to happen is that a lot of people, they will go on maybe like mini vacations or staycations or what have you during the early summer months, which aren't really summer, like May and June. Summer doesn't officially start until June, right? Late June, but they'll go on like staycations or to parties, Memorial Day party, July 4th party, but then they'll finally pick up going to real vacations in August. And the reason why they do that is because they want to get in the last bit of summer. Not only is it, super hot, super humid here in America, but, sometimes the airfares are cheaper, so many different things. But also, the reason why you don't want to launch a film in August or September is because of the school year. Like, at that point in time, parents are like, if there are parents are like, listen, we have to start saving up money for the school year, or we have to start spending money already for the school year because we got to get supplies because, teachers have already sent out lists for what the students need day one of class. And it's like, yay, back to school. Then you got to spend like freaking $100 or $50 even. That can be too much these days. You have to spend money just to get supplies, not to mention new school clothes, other things that you need for school. Like, people are once again spending money, and that money is the same money that they would have spent on going to a film, renting a film on a streaming service or whatever. Like, all of their extra money is going into pretty much their kids. And that also goes for younger people. Younger people are like, well, even if you don't have kids, they might still be in college or other various things. They might be trying to still go on their last little bit of vacation or going to the last summer parties, etc., etc. Or some people start saving up money for the holiday season, for the fall winter season come August and September. So neither one of those months are good to launch a movie in, especially if you think that movie is a good or a great movie. That's why you tend to get movies like, I hate to call this one out, but like, you'll get movies like The Creator, which, it'll have quite a few critics and quite a few people who like the movie, but the general audience will not love the movie. It'll be one of those movies to where it becomes, I guess, a sort of a niche kind of movie. It creates a small little group of people who really, really enjoyed the movie. But again, is it a great movie? No. Was it a good movie? It depends on your taste, but it was definitely a September movie. Like, it had that sort of feel to it, to where it was like, I don't know. It's just okay. It's one of those movies. You get a lot of those kinds of movies to where it's like, you are not really going to fall in love or remember this movie unless it's absolutely right up your alley and it's the exact thing that you want. So again, January, March, August, and September are the worst times to launch practically any movie, with those few exceptions put in there. If you're launching a sequel to pretty much anything, any kind of movie, is in one of those 4 months, that sequel is bound to be a terrible movie. It's just bound to be a terrible movie. Now, again, there have been some caveats, some movies that have done well in those months, and it's just like, it did well, it was a good movie, etc., etc. Weirdly enough, there are actually quite a few hit films that have released in August. One of the most recent ones, of course, has been The Meg. Another one has been Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 1, right? But in general, August movies and September movies are not really considered good movies. They just aren't. And if people are spending money on vacations, if they're staying in because of the weather, if they're spending money on school supplies and things like that, then no, it's just not a good month to launch something in. It just isn't. So when I look at the movies that are supposed to be launching this March, I'm like, I don't know. Those movies, they're probably not going to be that good. They probably are going to be that good. And listen, like I said, I'm going to have a whole long video on Dune Part 2. So yes, you can hit me with some of the caveats of, but it was originally supposed to come out in November, blah, blah, blah. I get it. I understand. And yes, I talk about all of that in the video. But trust me on this. Some of what I'm saying, it generally holds true. And as I've said, yes, you have had some hits here and there in each one of those months over the last couple of years, because people are true cinephiles, are hungry to have good movies all throughout the year, right? So we've had the hit of Megan, or M3GAN, if you want to pronounce it that way. That came out last January, I believe, 2023. Was it a good movie? But it had a good viral marketing thing going on, so it came out, did well. Year of the pandemic, 2020, Bad Boys for Life. And we're going to talk about that in another video, because I was actually of the opinion that even before the slap, I didn't think that Will Smith was a star anymore. And Bad Boys for Life coming out in, like, I feel like it came out at the very end of January 2020, not even in February, but just the very end of January. I was like, ooh, that is not a good sign at all. But then, of course, Denzel Washington, the very next year in 2021, he also had a January film. It's Denzel Washington, Jared Leto, and Rami Malek in like The Little Things. Terrible movie, terrible movie, terrible movie. But again, it was January, so I didn't expect much. So yeah, we'll talk about it a little bit later. But yeah, just know January, March, September, and August, and even in this era of streaming and era of do we even need movies anymore and all that stuff, the studios and production companies outside of Netflix, they have pretty much held close to that old standard, and I don't think that they're going to change that anytime soon. So, anyways, yeah, that's it. I don't have a sign off. Hey, everybody. So while I don't have an official sign off yet, I guess I should do the whole please like, comment, share, and if you so desire and you want to see more, subscribe. But more importantly, I will ask that you please go and purchase one of my books. They are mostly ebooks, and pretty much they are all under $10. See if any of my work is actually any good, if it lives up to any of the things that I'm talking about here on my channel, specifically with the entertainment industry videos. So please go purchase my books. All of my links are down below. Thank you.